I have a more imaginative, humane, sustainable solution, a new city. A new eco-city of 500,000 people on the periphery of Auckland, south of the Manukau Harbour maybe, car-free, walkable, water access, common open space connected to Auckland by fast rail. And he goes on to talk about how new towns are not new. There have been projects in the past right back to the 19th century. And it would cut down on the requirements for large energy and material and infrastructural inputs and give us the ability to create something truly beautiful and permanent. John Munro.
I like his idea, but there is a big proviso with it. It's got to have great transport systems available to take people from there to where they're going to work. So if you've got a good public transport system for it and around the area going to the workplaces, then it's going to be okay. In Christchurch, we tried it basically with Rolleston. I mean, Rolleston was set up by Norman Kirk all those years ago. It's going to be a new city, and it's only really become like a big city now. We haven't just finished the infrastructure of getting the motorway through to it, and there's certainly, you know, the rail link isn't being operated as a transport one. So there is always transport problems coming up from Rolleston to Christchurch each morning, going back each evening. So it's got to have a good public transport system or a good traffic system before you can operate a new city like that to still add on to Auckland or add on to Christchurch or Wellington or whatever.
I think it's wonderful to wish for this kind of thing, but the reality is, if you look at a lot of new cities, they were built after the devastation, for instance, of war or bombing or huge changes in society. And to build a city for 500,000 people would most probably cost, I just worked out, I think about 150 billion, because they've got 150,000 houses
Well, that's quick maths.
And then you've got the roading, and then you've got all the other things. And, it's too big a task. I mean, I just think you're going to get... We're condemned to be the add-on city.
All right, okay. But interesting idea, John. Thank you. And before we go, NZTA and Simon Bridges have rolled this out. A 2-week-long pilot giving plug-in electric vehicles access to 5 priority motorway on-ramps in Auckland. So these 1,000... electric vehicle owners have been sent stickers to qualify. Do you want electric cars on priority lanes intended for buses and vehicles with lots of people in?
I think we should encourage electric cars, but I think the problem with that is that the people who are in the other lanes look at it and can't see the difference, and so that will lead to abuse. I actually think with electric cars you could do what I think London does, which is free parking. And, you know, wherever they go, they get a free park. So they don't have to pay for the parking. That actually makes it a lot easier.
That's a better bonus. Yeah.
Remember the last time we put stickers on cars? Carless days. Carless days. You know, remember how successful was that one, you know?
You wouldn't need carless days if we all had electric cars, of course. Do you think there's already enough confusion in Auckland with car lanes and what are bus lanes and when do they overlap?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are always people being pinged every day going in the bus lane. You know.
Poor innocent motorists.
Yeah.
John Barnett, thank you very much for coming on the panel.
Thank you.
Barry Corbett, thank you very much for coming on the panel too.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for your company, everybody, and we are back tomorrow. It is coming up to checkpoint time with John Campbell, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, Wellington College launches an investigation after offensive comments relating to rape and consent were posted by students on social media. The principal has condemned the post as deplorable. We'll hear from him shortly. Also tonight, will there be losers in the changes to super eligibility, and if so, who are they? The gender pay gap, Trump's new travel ban, and the Russians, are they coming to get him? Jacinda Ardern, officially Labour's new deputy leader, plus the owner of the now demolished 61 Molesworth Street in Wellington, faces the tenancy tribunal, accused of illegally accommodating tenants in his office block. He'll join us. And $90,000 cash for a car park in Auckland. All of that and much more after Anna with the 5 o'clock news.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. Wellington College has launched an investigation into 2 students posting on social media of offensive comments about rape and consent. In their posts to a closed Facebook group of fellow students, they describe having sex with intoxicated, passed-out girls. One of them says if you don't take advantage of a drunk girl, you're not a Wellington College boy. The principal, Roger Moses, says the comments are deplorable and do not reflect the school's values, and you can hear more from Mr Moses in an interview shortly on Checkpoint. The Labour Party's new deputy leader has attacked the government over its refusal to hold an inquiry into historic abuse claims. In Parliament this afternoon, Jacinda Ardern accused the government on spending more on lawyers to fight the victims of abuse in court than it spends on settling their claims. An Official Information Act request shows just one lawyer was paid $750,000 to work on 3 cases. Ms Ardern challenged the Social Development Minister Anne Tolley to defend the amount spent.
Why is she willing to spend millions of dollars fighting historic abuse claims but won't act on the call for a state inquiry into abuse to ensure it never happens again?
Honourable Anton.
The Crown does have a responsibility to protect the taxpayers' interests where there are significant and complex claims.
Anne Tolley replying to Jacinda Ardern today. The National Party has changed its mind and will now back a members' bill giving the victims of domestic violence paid leave from work. New Zealand First announced today that it too will support the legislations. Until now, National had said the bill would impose significant extra costs on businesses and it couldn't support it. The bill's promoter, the Green MP Jan Logie, says it's fantastic National has changed its mind.
I hope that they've listened to people's concerns, and it was great when Business New Zealand came out and said that they wanted the discussion to happen. And I guess they saw they were on the losing side of a really important issue.
Jan Logie, the bill gives victims 10 days paid leave to help them move house, attend court hearings and consult with lawyers. A 66-year-old man who is retiring after more than 40 years of labouring work says the age of eligibility for superannuation should be staggered. Fishmonger Kiha Lawrence says those who do physical labour should be able to qualify earlier, depending on their condition. He says he loves his job but can't physically work any longer.
I'm starting to feel the aches and pains of my work through all the years. And that's really the reason why I'm finished. And my back and arms, legs from standing, arms from lifting, back from lifting.
Kiha Lawrence. The government plans to raise the age of eligibility from 65 to 67 in 20 years' time. Parliament has gone into urgency to fix a legal loophole allowing more than 100 child sex offenders to go unregistered. The law introducing a national register came into effect last October, but convicted offenders who were on release conditions or who had not yet been sentenced were taken off the list. Here's our political reporter, Demelza Leslie.
The Police Minister, Paula Bennett, says the changes being introduced today will make it clear that the 107 offenders affected should have been on the register all along. She says, however, that they've all continued to be monitored by the police and corrections. The register requires people convicted of a child sex offence to tell the police where they're staying, who with, and their contact details. The bill will pass through all its stages tonight. From Parliament, Demelza Leslie.
The jury in the trial of a man charged with wounding 4 police officers has heard that 2 of them were lucky not to be more seriously injured. Reese Warren faces several charges, including 2 of attempted murder, in connection with the siege of a house near Kawerau in March last year. Opening the Crown's case in the High Court in Hamilton, Aaron Perkins QC told the jury that after entering the house, Armed Defenders Squad members were shot at in the hallway. 1 bullet struck the sights of one officer's rifle, which shattered into fragments that hit him in the face and hand. Shrapnel hit another officer in the head, splitting the bone of his skull. It's 5:04. In sport, red cards for bad behaviour are to be introduced into the game of cricket. A new law allowing umpires to send players off will come into effect from October. Here's our sports editor, Stephen Hewson.
Umpires will be able to award penalty runs if a team brings the game into disrepute through acts of violence or showing dissent to an umpire's decision. If the offence is bad enough, umpires will be able to send a player off. The Marylebone Cricket Club, which governs the laws of cricket, has also announced the dimensions of a bat will be reduced. The bat change comes with the bat having dominated the ball in recent years. Batters have been wielding heavier bats with greater depth and bigger edges, allowing them to hit the ball further. And for the first time, the laws of the game will also be written in a language that is neutral to both sexes. This is Stephen Hewson.
Chiefs winger James Lowe has signed a 3-year deal with Irish club Leinster and won't discount the possibility of playing for Ireland in the future. The 24-year-old believes he's a long way from making the All Blacks and has opted to move. Chelsea have beaten London rivals West Ham United 2-1 to restore their 10-point lead in the English Premier League. And former New Zealand Rugby League captain Nathan Kalis has been appointed coach of the Junior Kiwis. And that's the news.
Raising the pension age.
The population is changing. We can't get away from that. That's not something you or I get to choose. The simple fact of the matter is we're all living longer.
Does it stack up?
They struggle to get to 65 now and draw superannuation, and they shouldn't be required to work another 2 or however many years it is a future government might think is a good idea for them to work.
Or are we lagging behind?
If you look at the other countries that are moving to either 67 and 68, then we're a decade or a decade and a half behind nearly every other country.
The big ticket items. Susie Ferguson and Guy Espin, a morning report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, the link between hearing loss and dementia. And after 10, a world expert on the topic of goal accomplishment and its connection to happiness, Caroline Adams-Miller. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after morning report on RNZ National.
Now the Met Service short forecast until midnight tomorrow. From Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel Bay of Plenty, rain spreading south today with some heavy falls and localised downpours. Clearing in the Bay of Plenty tomorrow but remaining cloudy elsewhere with a few showers, possibly heavy. From Waitomo to Wellington, also Taumaranui, Taupo and Taihape. Occasional rain, possibly heavy from Taranaki and Taihape northwards, easing to isolated showers overnight and fine spells increasing. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa. Rain spreading north this afternoon and evening, possibly heavy in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. Rain easing to a few showers tomorrow. Nelson and Buller, scattered rain clearing overnight. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain easing to a few showers today, then clearing tomorrow. Otago, Southland, Westland and Fiordland, mainly fine with rain clearing overnight. And for the Chatham Islands, occasional rain clearing tomorrow. RNZ National, it is 8 minutes past 5. You're on Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much, Anna Thomas. Coming up tonight on the program, Jane Patterson on the politics of superannuation and paying for it. People who do work that's tough on their bodies, how do they feel about raising the super age? Donald Trump revises his executive order, but we're told it's Russia he has to worry about. And the Iron Woman who came last triumphantly. But we begin with comments posted in a closed group on Facebook by students at Wellington College and liked by other college students. They're now the subject of a school investigation. It's believed they were first posted on Sunday evening, and as well as being liked, they were seen by other students who were so concerned about them, they notified parents. This is what some of the posts said.
Women. Not even drunk. Pass her out, then f*** her. Job done. If you don't take advantage of a drunk girl, you're not a true WC boy.
Radio New Zealand was given screenshots of the comments, and so too has the school itself. Being the headmaster of Wellington College, Roger Moses, has begun an investigation.
Somebody from the public flicked through an email with the comments on it, John, and we've been doing some investigation since then, but obviously we're appalled and disgusted by the content. It's something that simply doesn't reflect the values of our school, but I guess it shows the dangers of immature boys on social media and the damage that can occur by these completely deplorable comments.
So you are in the process of speaking to the boys or to their families. What are you doing? How are you handling this investigation?
Well, the first thing we have to do is to find out when these comments took place. I mean, there are some jurisdictional issues in terms of if it's happened in the evening at home. We've already spoken to the boys, we've spoken to their parents, and it's likely that I'll be speaking to the school about it too, about the reputational damage that these things can cause, quite apart from the utter inappropriateness and the only word I can think of is the deplorable nature of these comments.
What do the boys and the parents say? I mean, in general terms.
Look, I think the boys are absolutely distraught with what's happened. I don't in any way want to minimise what was said, but I think at times there is bravado that can happen on these jolly websites. And I think that's probably what's happened. I think that sometimes in the supposed privacy of a chat room, things can be said that they think are either appropriate or funny or whatever, without actually stopping to think of the implications. So they are absolutely shattered by what they've done. I believe they've already apologised on the website. I don't have access to it, so I don't know whether
these are private groups, right?
Mm. They're private groups, and this is the real problem we face in schools. We can say the right messages from assemblies. We can have the right programs in place. We can try and push the right values. But at times, regrettably, I guess in the, I can only say the privacy of these chat rooms that we don't have access to, idiotic boys can let you down in a way that is very, very sad. And I think that's what's happened on this occasion.
If you don't take advantage of a drunk girl, you're not a true Wellington College boy, one of these. I mean, it's
appalling. It is absolutely dreadful. I don't know where it's come from. This is certainly, I guess I can repeat it 100 times, but these are not the values that we stand for here. They're not the values that we stand for publicly. I don't believe that is probably the viewpoint of the boy himself, but I think it's been said. You cannot, and these boys have to understand that what is said remains in the ether forever, and both he and the school have to deal with the fallout that occurs from that. So, I make no apologies. Well, that's not the word I should use. I make no defence of what's said whatsoever. I'm as appalled by it as I'm sure you are, and anybody else who's seen it.
There's a bigger issue here, isn't there? And this is the behaviour of our boys on the internet, and who knows what their behaviour was like off the internet. The only behaviour we are able to truly look at is what takes place on the internet. It's also the material they can access on the internet, and this
absolutely.
and so much pornography is disrespectful, hateful, misogynistic. How do we protect our sons? From the impact, the damaging impact of that. How do we make them understand that they have to behave better and be better?
I wish I had an easy answer for you, John. My heart says absolutely yes to everything you're saying. I've been in the job for 22 years now, and I think the whole question of social media is the huge elephant in the room that we're all dealing with. Previously, even things like bullying you could deal with in a much more direct kind of a way. But with, as you say, with the influence of pornography, with the way that comments can be made, quite apart from this particular issue, any kind of bullying comments, at times I've seen this over the years, that things will be said that young men think are okay because they're cool to say. There's almost a gap between, I guess, their technological development and their moral, ethical development. That's the only way in which I can put it. So, it's hit us today. It's something I'm certainly not proud of as the headmaster of Wellington College. We're a great school. We've got great boys in it. In this occasion, we've been let down by two. And I think probably many of my colleagues who are principals throughout the country could easily see themselves in my position. It's a situation that none of us wish to be in. We are all vulnerable to. We can say the right message as much as we want, and I'll certainly be doing that and reinforcing it. But I think you're absolutely right, John. There is a much wider issue there, a wider issue of at the click of a button, there is access to pornography, there's access to all sorts of stuff that as young men, you and I would have had no knowledge of whatsoever. And so I think this whole world of technology, while it's done wonderful things in all sorts of ways in terms of access to knowledge, equally I think there is a danger of a kind of a moral corrosion that goes on. I don't believe these particular boys are bad boys. I don't believe they actually mean this for 1 minute, but it's been said, and it can't be unsaid.
Roger Moses, the principal of Wellington College. Coming up, superannuation. Jane Patterson filing for us on that subject. But first, it's sexism stupid. New research has found the 12% pay gap between men and women is mostly down to gender bias. The Auckland University of Technology research says traditional factors like education, occupation and industry have a less influence on the pay gap than previously thought. In fact, it's believed they only account for about 20% of it. Catherine Hutton reports.
In 2014, Rest Home worker Christine Bartlett took her employer, Terra Nova Homes and Care, to court, arguing her $14.32 an hour was gender discrimination. Her case sparked a legal wrangle and forced the government to the bargaining table. It also resulted in the formation of a working group on pay equity, which recommended that women get paid the same amount as men for doing the same work. ETU Assistant National Secretary John Rowell says today's speech by the Women's Minister Paula Bennett simply restated the government's principles.
We are waiting for settlement of Christine Bartlett's case and also action around getting into Parliament and passing changes to the Equal Pay Act to ensure that women in female-predominant workplaces have got a process to pursue pay equity.
Mr Rowell says he'd rather the minister had said when the government is going to settle the Terra Nova case, which has implications for 50,000 care and support workers. Ms Bennett wouldn't comment on the case, saying negotiations were ongoing. She says the public service, whose pay gap of 14% is higher than the national average, is taking steps to address this by making each government department publish data on their gender pay gaps.
We're actively going through and selecting women out for leadership programs so that they can go into promotion and take up those sorts of jobs that are there. I'm incredibly proud that in my time I've now got 45% of women in senior leadership roles within the public service. We're doing regular workshops with each department on what's going on. We're looking carefully at their recruitment processes.
Ms Bennett says she is reluctant to legislate and would rather businesses did the right thing.
Don't pay her what you think you'll get away with. Don't even pay what you think she'll accept. Just pay her what she's worth to your business and your organisation, and look at productivity and look at the contribution, and then, quite frankly, take gender out of it, pay them what they're worth.
The research found 80% of the gender pay gap must be attributed to conscious and unconscious bias against women. It also found the size of the gender pay gap increased for male and female employees on higher incomes. Kim Campbell from the Employers and Manufacturers Association in Auckland says more work needs to be done, particularly about what makes up that 80%.
There is a presumption drawn, and it may be the correct one, that it's various types of biases, but that's a conclusion that they've drawn because they have no other explanation. And I think before I draw that conclusion, I'd like to see a lot more research done.
Ms Bennett delivered her speech to members of the Human Resources Institute, who are mostly women.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, and I don't think that my organisation has a gender pay gap, but I'd like to do the audit to get that. If an audit showed that we do, then I'd definitely change the way I do my job.
I think the things that have been raised are things that we're kind of aware of in the background, but we don't necessarily take action. So we certainly do need to be doing more work. As Paula said, I think there's goodwill, but how do we change that into actually meaningful, actionable results?
Having been in recruitment in the past myself, I recall working for a union, doing a union assignment, and they said, we want an admin person, nobody of childbearing age. You know, get pregnant, bugger off. It's endemic, and I think we've got some generational issues still to flow through.
The Minister issued a challenge for businesses to find ways to reduce the gap. For Checkpoint, Catherine Hutton.
5:19. The owner of a Wellington office block demolished after November's earthquake has an appointment with the Tenancy Tribunal after an investigation found he'd unlawfully rented parts of the building to residential tenants. Prime Property Group owns 61 Molesworth Street and last year rented part of the first floor to Olive and Ernest Mape and their 2 children for $300 a week. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment found a kitchen and office cubicles were being used as bedrooms, a toilet was through a fire exit and the family was forced to use a shower on the ground floor of the building. MB has made an application to the Tenancy Tribunal for prime property to repay the family's rent, along with some damages. A short time ago, I asked Eyal Aharoni if he thought his behaviour as a landlord was good enough.
I don't think it was unsatisfactory. The mum and dad, the Mappa family, have seen the place and decided to rent it. It was a very spacious apartment. It wasn't cubicle, it was simply an apartment.
It wasn't an apartment. Eyal, it wasn't an apartment, it was an office.
John, it was an office that has been used as an apartment, but
it was an office in which people were sleeping. That doesn't make it an apartment.
John, it's best that you let me talk. You know, it's a bit hard to say what I want to say if you don't let me talk. But it was an office space that had been used as an apartment, but the family that moved in knew exactly what it was before they moved in and wanted to stay there. In fact, they sent us a letter after being there for 3 or 4 months that they would like to stay there for as long as possible. We have that in writing. It's up to them to decide whether it's satisfactory or not. You know, the rent was very modest, and I think that the situation was highly exaggerated. MB's statement, MB's slogan says, it's all about warm, dry, safer homes. It'd be hard-pressed to find a more warmer, drier, safer home that place in 61 Wilson Street.
Eyal, forgive me, but it was so unsafe that after the earthquake it had to be demolished. They had no insurance coverage, so they lost all of their possessions. I mean, you are not suggesting this is a shining exemplar of rental accommodation, are you?
John, the place was very safe. First of all, it was sprinkled building. Most of the accidents in residential accommodation are caused by fire, and there was never, ever any casualty, any deaths in a sprinkled building. So in terms of fire, it was very safe. Although the place suffered during the earthquake, so did a number of other buildings, like the defense headquarters that needs to be demolished, was a very supposedly very sound building, but has suffered. So it wasn't an unsafe place. It was not registered earthquake prone. And I think the situation has been highly exaggerated, John. I just want to say...
Hold on, what am I exaggerating? Did Oliver, Ernest and their 2 children lose everything they owned by being unable to return to the building and you having no insurance coverage for them? Am I exaggerating that, or is that a statement of fact?
No, this is a statement of fact. But first of all, you and the rest of the media have claimed that I had the building unlawfully full of residents. The situation was absolutely not that. We had 3 parties in the building. We had a sickness beneficiary who paid no rent living on level 4. We have 1 bankrupt businessman who paid no rent living on level 8. And we had the Mappa family living on level 1. All of them are people that unfortunately, regretfully, we allowed them to live in the building, not because we wanted to make a profit, only because we just tried to help those people because they had nowhere to stay. I mean, just to give you, an idea, the holding costs of this building are $300,000 a year. The rent I recovered from the Mappa family is $15,000 a year. So nobody was trying to create a huge profit out of illegal activity, as explained, by yourself and other people in the media. Now, we regret it. We obviously won't do it again. We won't allow people in need into our office building, even though sometimes it's hard to say no, because you've got a perfectly good empty office building that we're currently not using.
You may have to pay back the rent. There is an order against you for the rent paid by the tenant, the family, totaling over $6,000 to be repaid. Are you prepared to do that?
Well, if there is currently a court action against me, we will defend the court action. But if the judge decides that this is the outcome, we will comply with the court, of course.
Have you spoken to the family about how they are since the situation where they were required to leave the building urgently and they were unable to return to it to get their belongings, and there was no insurance coverage to compensate them for that? Have you spoken to the family subsequently?
I have tried to make contact with the family. We've contacted them a number of times, tried to organize a meeting. They declined to have a meeting, and I suspect a little bit uncomfortable from the very inaccurate situation they presented to the media.
What was inaccurate about the situation they presented to the media? What was the thing that was most wrong that they described to the media?
Well, the situation that they portrayed, that we have forced them and they had no choice. They had no time to think about it. That's absolutely incorrect. We were just trying to help them. We offered them an apartment in a different location, which didn't work for them because of the situation with the school. Reluctantly, we said, look, we've got that place. They moved in. They knew it's an office building. And we said, look, you can stay here temporarily. We only offered it to them for a very short period, hopefully for a few weeks until they find another place to go. And they quite comfortably decided to stay there. In fact, send us a letter. They want to stay there. I mean, John, just a minute. I mean, they told you and others in the media that they had no time to decide, and we forced them to make a decision within a day. So why would they send us a letter 2 to 3 months later that, please, we would like to stay there as long as possible? Isn't that a misrepresentation of the situation?
Well, they couldn't find anywhere else, could they? You were offering them another place, weren't you? You were offering...
Well, first of all, we have offered them another place.
How much was the rent on that other place?
The rent on the other place was $600 a week. And we have offered it to them. We have offered them twice a number of places, but of course they didn't want to move because they're paying, they're paying only $300 a week, including power, which is probably equivalent to $250 a week. You can't find a place at that rate in the city, because the city is currently, desperate for accommodation. I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen in the paper last week, one flat becoming available for rent. There's 40 people in the queue trying to rent it. The situation is desperate at the moment, and I'm actually, Moby is prosecuting me to satisfy. Satisfy the media and the public relation whatever. But I would have thought that Moby will be using their resources to investigate why do we have so many perfectly good empty office buildings, and why we have so many people living in warehouses, garages, and cars, and overpopulated houses. But this is the situation.
So, are you saying that that people should be living in office buildings, empty office buildings?
Absolutely. Look, empty office buildings, which are sprinkled and are safe from a fire purpose and from an earthquake point of view, there's no reason why people shouldn't be living in them.
What about bathroom facilities, showers? What about cooking facilities?
Well, you have to provide. Of course, you have to provide bathroom, cooking, and shower facilities. No question about that. But that's not hard to provide.
A.L. Aharoni, the owner of the building which has subsequently been demolished. We turn now to superannuation. 25 hours after Bill English announced that by 2040 New Zealand super won't be paid to people until they're 67. Today, the politics played out in Parliament inevitably, and Labor and National, who have both reversed their positions on the age, were loudly debating not only the rights and wrongs of their current positions, but also of their previous ones. Also under the spotlight, whether young people are being ripped off by having to wait an extra 2 years. Here is our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Bill English says the plan gives certainty to all New Zealanders and gives people plenty of time to plan for their retirement. But the New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters says there's no way his party would vote for a raise in the age.
We are categorically not going to support this legislation or a continuation of the National Party breaking its word to the constituency. And they have, and shortly I'll outline the 8 times he's done it already.
So you will never vote for this legislation?
Can I say it one more time? We are not going to vote for this betrayal of the electorate.
Meanwhile, other politicians were talking about whether young New Zealanders are the ones bearing the brunt. Nikki Kay is the youth minister and at 37 one of the younger members of the National Party caucus. She says there's already a debate about baby boomers versus millennials, but on the whole young people recognise it's the right thing to do. And Ms Kay called out Labour's new deputy leader on her stance.
If you look at a number of statements made even by people like Jacinda Ardern, they were very clear that they thought that the age needed to be raised, so they have flip-flopped massively.
Just minutes after being chosen by her colleagues to replace Annette King as Labour's deputy leader, Ms Ardern was defending her position.
I absolutely support the position that Andrew has, firmly staking in the ground
that we support keeping the age where it is. The argument that I always made was about making sure there was affordability.
She says resuming contributions to the super fund, which was set up to pre-fund the future cost of providing universal superannuation, is a bigger issue.
We want to make contributions to the savings scheme to ensure we were able to afford people's retirement. Bill English has not done that. He's delayed contributions to the super fund, and he's essentially said that it's my generation that's going to pick up the tab.
The United Future leader and government support partner Peter Dunn opposes the plan on the basis it disadvantages younger New Zealanders.
Effectively, everyone under the age of about 45 is now going to be facing a longer period before they can draw superannuation. They just happen to be the generation who've copped a lot of the other changes that have been made over the last number of years, student loans, higher education costs, for instance. So they're getting it from all sides and now going to be told they've got to work a few more years before they can pick up their pension.
The Prime Minister Bill English was asked whether younger generations should feel ripped off by the planned changes.
Oh, look, I think that would be a bit extreme. I mean, the fact is with the superannuation announcement yesterday, someone who's aged 40 will get about the same time on national super when they turn 67 as a person going on it today.
And during question time, Mr English used a patsy question from a National Party MP to take a dig at Ms Ardern.
Well, Mr Speaker, I've seen a whole range of reports. Here's one. In 3 years, superannuation will cost more than the entire education budget. It will grow to 20 times the cost of unemployment benefit. We need to ask if the universal age of super is set at the right place. That was the new Deputy Leader of the Labor Party, Jacinda Ardern.
But Mr English was then challenged by the Labor leader Andrew Little on why the government had refused for several years to resume super fund contributions. Mr English says at this stage the government intends to start paying into the super fund around 2020. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
28.5 to 6. We wanted to talk to people today about their retirement. Are they ready? Will they be ready? Are they planning or simply staying afloat as well as they can in the present? Many people we spoke to in Auckland said they'd move out of Auckland when they retire, either because they can't afford to rent in our largest city or because what equity they have in their homes is worth more cashed up and spent elsewhere. And they may be right, because Auckland is now so expensive, even a car park costs more than a home in some other parts of the country. A car park, not a car building, just one park. Here's Zach Fleming with more.
She'll look at offers over 95. She's actually had, the vendor has had a cash offer of 90,000. They said they're happy to disclose that to you and they've turned it down. Basically the reason their thinking is that they'll never be able to get a car park like this again.
Yes, Central Realty's Tracy Taylor just said her clients turned down an offer of $90,000 cash for an inner city Auckland car park. She took me to 15 Mount Street in Auckland CBD today, just up from the Auckland University of Technology, to show it to me.
Is 100 grand-ish for a car park unusual these days though?
No, the Airedale apartments, which are getting sold off the plans, the cheapest property is $525,000 and a two-bedroom $780,000, and if you want a car park it's $99,000 on top of that, and it won't be available till the end of next year. So I think if you consider that as the market's going up, I think most car parks now, if they're in a good position, maybe anywhere between 90 and actually I've heard of quite a few selling over 100,000 now.
You can appreciate other people around the country listening to the story probably think 100 grand for a car park is utterly ridiculous.
I've had a lot of clients that thought when it was 10,000 that was crazy, and then when it went to 50,000 they thought the same thing, and now they're going, darn, we should have bought quite a few of these. I think the capital gain's been going. I think it's just mainly because a lot more people are actually living in the city now. There's a lot more, the council's obviously pushing to try and put more apartments in, obviously because of the whole housing crisis. So it makes sense, obviously, as you've got these apartments going, a lot of them are selling without car parks.
And the man who offered $90,000 cash for the Mount Street car park Tracy took me to says he's now just going to buy an apartment that comes with a car park instead. Not for the apartment, he lives in Mount Albert and will rent that out. He just wants the car park.
It's a bad investment, putting 100,000 into a car park. I'm just trying to find a unit which has got a car park so I can rent the unit out and use the car park myself. Some people would say that that's just making it more difficult for people trying to buy their first home. I mean, you're taking one apartment away, from someone who could buy it. Yes, it will. In one way, if you look at it from a good perspective point of view, not from a greedy point of view, it's going to make it difficult for other people.
So $100,000 for a car park in Auckland CBD. Or how about an entire home? A quick search on Trade Me this afternoon, you can get a 2-bedroom home in Bluff for $99,000, or a 3-bedroom home in Kawerau in the Bay of Plenty for $98,000. Both have off-street parking. Back in Auckland, Tracy Taylor says it's simple supply and demand. She thinks the price of car parks is going to go up further.
I think it's like anything with real estate, what is supply and demand. If there's more demand than there is supply, then obviously that's going to push the price up. Unless there's going to be some miraculous parking coming from somewhere and the council's going to be building a whole lot of parking garages or maybe even building some and actually selling some of the car spaces to people, it might become even worse.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Coming up on Checkpoint, Donald Trump's revised travel ban. The Crown says sheer good luck saved the lives of 2 police officers wounded along with 2 other colleagues during a 24-hour siege. And the survivor of a car crash that killed 2 and injured 4 describes the moment a car driven by a tourist came out of nowhere. Known as Next with Business. We'd love your feedback. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. But before anything else, Anna Thomas with the headlines.
Thanks, John. Wellington College has launched an investigation into 2 students posting on social media of offensive comments about rape and consent. In their posts to a closed Facebook group of fellow students, they describe having sex with intoxicated, passed-out girls. The principal, Roger Moses, told Checkpoint the comments are deplorable and do not reflect the school's values. He says it shows the dangers of immature boys on social media. The Labour Party's new deputy leader has attacked the government over its refusal to hold an inquiry into historic abuse claims. In Parliament this afternoon, Jacinda Ardern accused the government on spending more on lawyers to fight the victims of abuse in court than it spends on settling their claims. One of the longest-serving MPs in Parliament says Nationals' plan to raise the pension age from 2037 has the potential to stir up intergenerational resentment. The United Future leader and government support partner Peter Dunn says the proposal disadvantages younger New Zealanders. The National Party has changed its mind and will now back a members' bill giving the victims of domestic violence 10 days paid leave from work. New Zealand First announced today that it too will support the legislation. Malaysian police say 2 North Korean men wanted for questioning in connection with the killing of Kim Jong-nam are hiding out in the North Korean embassy in the capital, Kuala Lumpur. Mr. Kim, the estranged half-brother of the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, was poisoned by assassins using the chemical nerve agent VX at Kuala Lumpur airport last month. 2 people have been freed after a truck and trailer unit and 2 cars crashed on State Highway 1 north of Wellsford. 1 person has been taken to hospital with critical injuries. Another is in a serious condition. The highway is closed with detours on Mangawhai Road. And that's the news.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna. See you in about 22 minutes for the 6 o'clock news. Let's turn to business news now with Nona. Hi, Nona. The financial stability of New Zealand being looked at today. Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank making a speech, and the IMF has had some stuff to say too, right?
Yeah, so it's an interesting day. The financial stability of New Zealand, the Reserve Bank is, of course, concerned about that as well as it is about inflation. And the Deputy Governor made a speech today to Business New Zealand and said that, they were looking at whether or not the retail bank should be putting more capital aside to protect themselves in case of, say, a global financial crisis, that kind of a thing. And, they're reviewing it. They're going to spend some time doing so. But, when they talk about these things, it's almost always what happens. It's inevitable in some ways, perhaps. We don't know. But certainly there's some experts out there that believe that that's probably the way the Reserve Bank should go. So maybe we'll see that happen.
Right. And, of course, we're getting a new governor at some stage.
That's right, very soon.
Right.
I guess a year, right? Because he's retiring in September. Yeah. And then, it's Mr. Spencer is going to be there until, I guess, March, and then somebody new, so a year from now.
Okay. And what did the IMF say?
Interesting. Like the International Monetary Fund. So they took a look at the New Zealand economy and our financial stability, I guess, and thought, gave us a pretty good tick on the report card. Thought that we would grow reasonably well over the next couple of years. They're peaking growth at 2.75%, which isn't too bad. But they thought there was room for improvement. And you might think, well, what could we do better? I mean, New Zealand's already riding the wave, right? But apparently high household debt is a risk. And guess what? They think that it would be a good idea if the government, which is reviewing debt-to-income ratio restrictions on mortgage lending, gave that power to the Reserve Bank. So the Reserve Bank might end up with another tool in their box there to deal with financial stability should it become an issue.
They haven't got many tools in their box, to be perfectly frank, have they?
Well, not really.
Yeah.
Well,
raising and lowering the OCR is their core business.
Also threatening to.
Okay.
Well, okay. They nod, they wink, the speech, that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're right. They don't have a lot of things. They do have some. They have macroeconomic policies such as the loan-to-value ratios. They can regulate the banks. They can require more capital. But they can't really do very much about our income and how much we earn versus how much we pay in debt. So, yeah. This would be a new power.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what do we do with the market, right?
Yeah, thanks,
okay.
Donna.
Oh, yeah, and one other thing, the Australian Reserve Bank, they held their official cash rate today at 1.5%. And our New Zealand dollar bounced a little teeny bit as a result of that, back above 70 US cents to 70.1. So that's where we were yesterday at 92.1 Australian and 57.2 pence. The top 50 index was down just slightly, 11 points to 7,168.
Anna Peltier, our Auckland business reporter, thank you. The Crown says sheer good luck saved the lives of 2 police officers wounded along with 2 other colleagues during a nearly 24-hour siege. Reese Warren has gone on trial in the High Court in Hamilton over the events that unfolded at a house on a rural property near Kawere about a year ago. The 28-year-old is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 1 of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and 3 of using a firearm against a law enforcement officer. Our Waikato reporter Andrew McRae has been in court.
Crown Prosecutor Aaron Perkins QC outlined to the jury the injuries sustained by 4 officers during the siege in March last year. These included wounds to their face, hands and legs, but 1 officer was more seriously hurt.
A head wound where the projectile or a projectile has split the skull bone, lodging just outside the brain, but causing brain hemorrhage and bruising to the brain, requiring, as you might imagine, significant surgery.
Mr Perkins said the officers had entered the house and were clearing it room by room when a shot was fired at them. It struck the sights on 1 officer's rifle.
Despite his obvious good fortune in that the bullet hit the sighting mechanism rather than any part of his person, and in particular his face, he did not come away uninjured. The right side of his face was injured by the ensuing shrapnel.
The injured officers were evacuated. A total of 48 shots were fired by the police as covering fire as the evacuation happened. A little while later, an officer stationed at the rear of the house was shot in the hand. Aaron Perkins described what happened next as a remarkable piece of good fortune.
The bullet that hit his hand then carried on and hit the magazine and wedged itself in the magazine in amongst all the bullets that are in that magazine. They actually wedged in the front of the magazine rather than going either side of it, which of course would have had consequences for Sergeant Marsh.
28-year-old Reese Warren's representing himself in court, along with assistance from what is called a Mackenzie friend, someone he knows and who has helped him with his case, but not a lawyer. Mr Warren was given an opportunity to respond to the Crown's opening, but quickly went off track.
You denied me lawful representation. So with those reasons, I find you biased and prejudiced, and I stood you down under Section 12 of Te Turi, Whenua Māori, Māori Lande.
He was quickly shut down by Justice Brewer.
What you think of me, what you think of the court process, that's not relevant at this stage. This is your opportunity to respond to what Mr Perkins has just said to the jury. Do you want to do that?
I asked for another judge who is not biased and prejudiced. So I stand you down again under Section 12 of Te Ture Whenua Māori Land Act 1993.
All right, please sit down, Mr. Warren.
The Crown intends to call nearly 40 witnesses in a trial expected to last 3 weeks. In Hamilton for Checkpoint, ko Andrew McRae-Tene.
Donald Trump has signed a revised executive order banning citizens from 6 Muslim-majority nations from travelling to the US, but has removed Iraq from the list. His controversial first attempt was blocked in the courts, of course, but legal battles are unlikely to be over. The American Civil Liberties Union says the order is still unconstitutional as it's based on religious discrimination, while several states which challenged the president's initial ban are reviewing what steps they might take. Now, the BBC's Nick Bryant with more.
There was applause when President Trump signed the first executive order, but it caused anger, chaos and confusion at America's airports as the travel ban on entrants from 7 mainly Muslim countries was hurriedly put into effect. But the US courts blocked it, opening the borders, delivering an embarrassing rebuke to President Trump. So today he signed a revised ban with unusually little fanfare. The Washington press corps not invited to witness it, a photograph taken instead by a White House staffer. He also left it to senior administration officials to sell one of his signature policies.
It is the president's solemn duty to protect the American people. And with this order, President Trump is exercising his rightful authority to keep our people safe.
While citizens from Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Iran, Libya and Yemen are still affected, Iraq, unlike last time, is not on the list. People with legal residency in the US who are holders of green cards and those who already have visas will not be subject to the ban. And Syrian refugees, originally banned indefinitely, are not singled out for harsher treatment. The Trump administration claims some refugees pose a potential terror threat.
In fact, today more than 300 people, according to the FBI, who came here as refugees are under an FBI investigation today for potential terrorism-related activities.
By delaying its implementation until later in the month, the White House is hoping to avoid a repeat of the botched rollout of the original travel ban. Removing Iraq, a key ally, is designed to make it more politically palatable for Republican critics. And the Trump administration has tried to make it legally watertight. But do constitutional scholars think they've succeeded?
There's still grounds to challenge this executive order. In fact, it's the same grounds that they had before. It's just going to be more difficult. None of this means that courts couldn't strike this down or issue a restraining order. It's just that it's going to be tougher. This has fewer edges.
In Muslim neighborhoods of America, such as Dearborn, Michigan, the travel ban affects family members and friends. And many complain it also marginalizes them.
It's really sad because it's affecting a lot of people, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. I think it's a wrong decision.
I wish he would teach us how to love each other more and be peaceful some more. Do not say this group is bad, that group is bad.
America has long celebrated its welcoming tradition towards immigrants, symbolized by the Statue of Liberty. But opinion on the travel ban exposes deep divisions here between those who protest it's un-American and those who believe it's necessary to protect the American homeland.
It's the BBC's Nick Bryant. Later in Checkpoint, we'll talk to one of the venerable Washington correspondents about Russia and Donald Trump. The Auckland Council's putting the brakes on the further development of the city's rapidly expanding rural northwest. The Council's Planning Committee has decided to push back some of its planned housing developments to give it time to get the necessary infrastructure like transport upgrades and stormwater systems, etc. into place. This means much of the future urban zone land in Kumeu, Huapai and Riverhead will start coming on stream from 2028, 6 years later than planned. And for the most part, people seem to think that's a good idea. Sarah Robson reports.
Rodney Local Board Deputy Chair Phelan Piri says $1 billion worth of roading and transport investment is needed, so slowing down housing developments earmarked for Kumeu, Huapai and Riverhead is a good thing.
We can finish off the already consented developments within Huapai and Riverhead, have a little bit of a breather, allow council and government to get ahead on the infrastructure provisions for that development, and then start planning and putting budget together for 10 years' time when the next wave starts coming through.
Bob Howard, one of the owners of Harcourts at Kumeu, says the delay is sensible so infrastructure issues can be sorted out.
Roading is the biggest issue we have out here at the moment, and just the linkage onto that northwestern motorway. So, I think with the 2,000 more that are just about to start construction, it's going to put this area under considerable pressure already without releasing further land on top of that.
Bob Howard says the housing developments that are about to get underway in the northwest will be enough to meet existing demand. And when developments closer to the city kick in, he expects demand in areas that are a bit further out, like Huapai, will ease a bit.
And saying that anything that's built, we're having no trouble getting it sold, but the purchasers do have a good wide range of selection and, making a choice. So it is still a buyer's market out here.
Bob Howard says the only ones who might not be so happy about the changes are land bankers or people in the community who have held off selling their land in the hope they'd get bigger bucks in the future.
They may regret that because they'll now realise they'll have to wait another 10 years longer before they get their higher price. So anyone that's sitting on an old orchard, which has just become a headache for them, maybe will be wishing they'd taken the money last year and moved on.
Paul Bull, the chief executive of Signature Homes, says builders are already busy working on other developments and this move won't have too much impact.
Us just being a house builder rather than a developer, we're going to continue to build homes for people in any part of Auckland where land's available. And it just, from our perspective, it makes sense that land is available in areas that have better, easier infrastructure type options, schooling, transport, all that sort of stuff.
At this morning's meeting of the Council's Planning Committee, Councillor Penny Holtz said the focus in the northwest needed to be on jobs as well as infrastructure.
We are preparing to build houses hand over fist, and we're still condemning those people to drive to South Auckland to get jobs. So we either sort out the jobs in time or we sort out the infrastructure.
And while some developments are being delayed, others in areas where the land and infrastructure are almost ready to go will be fast-tracked. For Checkpoint, Sarah Robson, Aho.
An American tourist charged with careless driving causing the deaths of 2 men has been remanded on bail. 41-year-old Nelson man Stephen Jays and 69-year-old Kevin Whitburn of Christchurch died last week in the multi-vehicle crash on Tasman's coastal highway. 4 other people were seriously injured, including the tourist's wife. The accident happened just a fortnight after a petition was presented to Parliament calling for tourists staying in New Zealand for longer than 3 months to sit a full driving test. We understand this tourist had not been in New Zealand that long. Janet and Kevin Whitburn were heading to Nelson from Mapua when Janet told me, completely out of nowhere,
I just saw the black car coming from the left. We were travelling in the left lane, going towards Nelson, and I just recall him coming out of this little side road and right in front of us, and then I saw a truck veering towards us, whom I assume was trying to avoid the car. But as I say, that's my version. But I don't recall any noise or anything like that, which the people tell me was horrific.
Gosh, and you don't recall the noise. So
I don't, no.
The truck on the face of it was avoiding the car, which was on the wrong side of the road.
That's what I'm thinking, but as I say, that's just my version. The truck was going in the opposite direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was just bang over.
Exactly, it was. A split second, it seemed like.
Janet Whitburn. Kevin died instantly in the collision, and while Janet suffered moderate injuries from which she is recovering really well, she says it's life without her wonderful husband she dreads after 40 years together. In the first year of their retirement, she and Kevin really were living the dream.
I can't really bear to think of the future at the moment, but I do know that I'm going to have lots of support. I've got a wonderful family, a wonderful group of friends, and Kevin was always very careful and he's made good provisions for me. It's something like this should happen.
Good man.
Yes, he was. Amazing man.
Yeah. And you have received, I understand, incredible support that
you've... Absolutely. People are coming in constantly with food and flowers, and Kevin was actually in the Air Force. We both were, quite a few years ago, and they've got a special web page, and just messages of support and love. They've just come pouring in. I just feel so blessed from that point of view. And the fact that Kevin, my husband, didn't suffer, that probably is the thing that's getting me through.
And I know you wanted to talk to us today for a couple of reasons. One was to say thank you and to acknowledge the support you've received, and to tell us how much it's meaning to you, how important it is.
Certainly, yes. The police, well, first of all, if I could start with the woman that helped me at the scene of the accident, and Pip, and she took me right away because I asked her to, because I don't have a very strong constitution for accidents and things like that, and she did take me away, and she just talked away to me until the ambulance arrived.
And
Everybody.
who was she, Janet? Was she a member of the public?
Yes, yes.
Gosh, what a good person.
Yes, she was. She was absolutely amazing. And the police have been amazing, not just to me, but to my family. They, one of the policemen picked my children up when they flew up from Christchurch, and the whole time I was in hospital, there was always somebody with me. I'm just absolutely overwhelmed by the goodness of people. Yeah.
Janet and the Whitburn family feel a devastating sadness, of course, but no anger towards the driver whose careless driving, that's the charge, killed Kevin. It was an accident, Janet said. Although as a tourist driver from a right-hand side of the road, country USA, the family does wonder if the accident could have been prevented by greater driver education.
Neither me nor my children believe that anybody would deliberately do this. We know that people wouldn't, you know. I don't know what happened. I don't know why he did it, but we really feel compassion for him, because he's actually going to have to live with us for the rest of his life. And to be honest, I would hate that. I don't know that I could live with myself. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not just us that's suffering. You know, it's all the people in our lives and our beautiful grandchildren that won't get to enjoy their granddad anymore, and he won't enjoy them anymore. But also, you know, the other victim, as you'd well know, he's got 2 little boys. Well, you know, they're going to be without their dad for the rest of their life, you know. And I don't think anybody would deliberately do that to somebody. But having said that, I certainly think, you know, something needs to be done. You know, somebody's got to be responsible for all these terrible tragedies that happen. But we were asked to put in victim support statements last night, because the court case was today, and that's what we stressed, that we feel, and this is only our opinion, but we just feel that the rental car companies would certainly have to take more onus for letting drivers just get into their cars and go without knowing the conditions or the rules of the road in New Zealand. We just can't believe that people would do that, you know.
Janet Whitburn, the wife of Kevin killed in the car crash near Nelson last week. The 63-year-old American man who faces charges of careless driving causing death and careless driving causing injury will reappear in court later this month. Janet and the Whitburn family, as we said, and as she said, as Janet said, don't blame the driver whose careless driving killed Kevin. They're not angry with him, but they do think that the onus should be on rental cars to make sure people understand New Zealand roads and how different they are from many of the places that our tourists drive in. We'd love your response on that. Should there be greater onus on rental car companies to educate drivers before they head out the door? Text us 2101, email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, and Twitter, of course, is @checkpointrnz. Facebook is checkpointrnz. Lots of feedback, speaking of it, coming in on our first item tonight, which was the Facebook posting by Wellington College students. Mr. Moses' response, he is the principal, was inadequate. This listener says, what about the more than 70 boys who liked these comments? So the comments are made, and then if you don't know Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, people like them. Something needs to be done at these boys' schools. This is an appalling reflection on our youth. Our communities need to respond and not fob this off as immature boys or locker room talk. This is very disturbing. Someone else says, and what about protecting young women? This is rape culture, pure and simple. I'm rather concerned the Wellington College headmaster ended up saying it's just 2 boys. Is the school going to deal with all the other Wellington College boys who liked it? I didn't hear Roger Moses mention the importance of teaching quality sexuality education, sexual consent and respect for women. More emphasis and resourcing for sex ed, please. Hello, in relation to Wellington College and rape jokes in relation to drunk girls, I have to say that my experience teaching in a South Island boys' school would suggest that the boys' values are typical. Single-sex boys' schools are misogynist and sexist, says that former teacher in a South Island single-sex boys' school. And this person, Stu, who points out that he's from Grammar, Roger Moses well said, terrible situation to be in, but he smashed that response. Go Wellington College. A very, very strong feedback coming in on that, and we appreciate it. The principal needs to stop worrying about social media and his school. He needs to start worrying about the attitudes that are being developed. It's coming up to 6 o'clock.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening. I'm Anna Thomas. Wellington College has launched an investigation into the posting of offensive comments about rape and consent on social media. In their posts to a closed Facebook group of fellow students, 2 students describe having sex with intoxicated, passed-out girls. The principal, Roger Moses, told Checkpoint the comments were emailed to the school.
We've been doing some investigations since then, but obviously we're appalled and disgusted by the content. It's something that simply doesn't reflect the values of our school, but I guess it shows the dangers of immature boys on social media and the damage that can occur by these completely deplorable comments.
Roger Moses says he has spoken to the boys and their parents and they are distraught. He says they aren't bad boys and didn't necessarily believe what they posted. Winston Peters has absolutely ruled out supporting legislation raising the age of entitlement to superannuation. If re-elected, National would pass a law under which the age would be progressively raised from 65 to 67 in 20 years' time. The New Zealand First Leader told reporters today there's no way his party will vote for that.
We are categorically not going to support this legislation or a continuation of the National Party breaking its word to the constituency, and they have. And shortly I'll outline the 8 times he's done it already.
So you will never vote for this legislation?
Can I say it one more time? We are not going to vote for this betrayal of the electorate.
The New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters. An employers' organisation says more research is needed into the reasons men are paid more than women. New research shows 80% of the gender pay gap can be attributed to conscious or unconscious bias against women. The Chief Executive of the Employers and Manufacturers Association in Auckland, John Campbell, says more work is needed.
There is a presumption drawn, and it may be the correct one, that it's various types of biases, but that's a conclusion that they've drawn because they have no other explanation. And I think before I draw that conclusion, I'd like to see a lot more research done.
An Auckland employers representative, John Campbell. The International Monetary Fund has given the New Zealand economy a pass mark, but says there's room for improvement. The IMF has been assessing the economy's resilience in the event of a financial shock. Our economics correspondent, Patrick O'Mara, reports.
The IMF expects the economy to keep growing, while the government's books are in good shape. But it warned against complacency, saying rising household debt remains a risk to the financial system if the global environment sours. The Washington-based body says the Reserve Bank should have debt-to-income limits in its toolkit, just in case. The government has yet to agree, saying it wants more information first. This is Patrick O'Mara.
A woman left with 7 holes in her skull after being bashed by a hammer has denied a suggestion someone yelled "stop" shortly before she was hit. Wayne Blackett, Cameron Hakeke, Michelle Blom, Nicola Jones and Julianne Torrance are on trial facing charges relating to 2 separate kidnappings of the woman. Edward Gay reports from the High Court in Auckland.
The woman, who can't be identified, was left on the side of a road in the Dome Valley north of Auckland with critical head injuries. She said she'd been bundled into a car earlier and driven to a garage area under a house where she was beaten and sexually violated. Under cross-examination, Miss Jones's lawyer said a woman yelled "stop, stop." The woman said no one ever said stop. Instead, she said she heard Miss Jones and Miss Torrance say, "We're going to end it like this." After being hit in the head, she woke in hospital 5 days later from a coma. Atu i te kōti mātua ko Edward Gayahau.
A British backpacker is recovering in a Brisbane hospital from an 8-week ordeal during which the police say she was subjected to continual sexual assault. Details of the case have been released today. Elizabeth Brown reports.
The police say the 22-year-old was held captive and repeatedly raped, beaten and choked during a 2-month road trip through the Queensland outback. She was rescued during a routine traffic stop on Sunday at Mitchell, 550 kilometres west of Brisbane. Officers noticed she had facial injuries and was visibly distressed. They then found her alleged attacker hiding in a storage unit at the back of the vehicle. A 22-year-old Cairns man has appeared in court on more than 20 charges, including 4 of rape, 8 of assault and 4 of strangulation. This is Elizabeth Brown.
In Malaysia, the police have sealed off the North Korean embassy in Kuala Lumpur in order to ascertain the number of officials inside. Staff will not be allowed to leave until that's done. Tension between the two countries has escalated since the killing at Kuala Lumpur International Airport last month of Kim Jong-nam, half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The police believe 3 men they want to question about the killing are hiding in the embassy. It's 6:05. The Black Caps pace bowler Neil Wagner says patience will be the key for the fast bowlers when trying to extract some life out of Dunedin's University Oval, where the first test against South Africa begins tomorrow. New Zealand hasn't lost a single one of the 7 tests it's played there, but Wagner, whose home ground it is, says the pitch certainly doesn't offer pace bowlers much help.
Got to be real patient and sort of know the area to bowl, and when you put it there consistently for a long period of time, and I think sometimes it's just longer than other grounds, there's always a bit of reward for you.
Neil Wagner. The Highlanders' injury woes continue to mount. All Black loose forward Liam Squire is now expected to be out for 6 weeks because of the knee injury he got during his side's 30-27 loss to the Crusaders on Saturday night. First 5 Hayden Parker and midfielder Jason Emery have already suffered season-ending injuries, while co-captain Ben Smith is recovering from concussion in week 1. The Highlanders, who have lost their first 2 games of the Super Rugby season, play the Blues in Auckland on Saturday night. And the former Kiwis captain Nathan Kalis will coach the junior Kiwis in their test against Australia in May. Kalis captained New Zealand to their Rugby League World Cup win in 2008. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, more messages and bottles with Kiri Danielle. She found one in West Auckland's Faux River. Her work on cleaning up the city's estuaries and creeks is also worth a mention. We have a window on the world of city halls, while this week's pundit, the historian Peter Clayworth, remembers when New Zealand was known as the land without strikes, along with the strikes that brought that reputation to an end. On Nights, rhymes of strikes, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And now the Met Service short forecast until midnight tomorrow from Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty. Rain spreading south today with some heavy falls and localised downpours, clearing in the Bay of Plenty tomorrow, but remaining cloudy elsewhere with a few showers, possibly heavy. From Waitomo to Wellington, also Taumaranui, Taupo and Taihape, occasional rain, possibly heavy from Taranaki and Taihape northwards, easing to isolated showers overnight and fine spells increasing. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa. Rain spreading north this afternoon and evening, possibly heavy in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. Rain easing to a few showers tomorrow. Nelson and Buller, scattered rain clearing overnight. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain easing to a few showers today, then clearing tomorrow. Otago, Southland, Westland and Fiordland, main fine weather with rain clearing overnight. And for the Chatham Islands, occasional rain clearing tomorrow. RNZ National, it is 6:08. You're with John Campbell on Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. Also on Checkpoint, lots of feedback coming in on drivers. Margaret says, hi John, do all rental cars have large keep left signs on the steering wheel? I think they should. And Neon 9 tells a long but a very good story about when he was in the US, he pulled over to get a packet of cigarettes. That's not a good story. And when he pulled back out onto the road, autopilot, because he was from New Zealand and he was just driving routinely, he was driving driving on the wrong side of the road, and he says everyone who travels to countries where they drive on the other side is at risk of precisely that behaviour. Thank you for your feedback. Are millennials already grappling with student loan debts and soaring house prices being ripped off by baby boomers, by being made to wait an extra 2 years for superannuation? And what are those doing physically demanding jobs who say they're getting the short end of the stick, given they're struggling to even work through to 65 at the moment, let alone 67 in 2040? As the political debate heated up over whether younger New Zealanders are having to carry the financial burden for the baby boomer generation, out on the streets of Auckland, the people we spoke to, and we spoke to lots of them, didn't seem that concerned about how they're going to fare in retirement. Not yet, anyway.
Do you ever worry about having enough money for your retirement?
Retirement? I haven't actually thought about that. I'm just thinking about now. but no.
It's kind of a long way off in the future though. Yeah.
Does it worry you then?
I suppose. Maybe. It will later when I'm like 45.
Hey, do you worry about having enough money for your retirement?
No.
Do you ever worry about having enough money for your retirement?
I don't have enough money to worry about.
Yes, quite a few people said that sort of thing to Zach Fleming. So opposition parties have made much of how people struggle to get to 65 now before they retire because of the physical nature of their work. So we thought we should ask those people what they think too. In other words, people whose work really taxes their bodies. Sally Murphy with this report.
Kiha Lawrence has worked in the fishing industry for over 40 years.
I do real physical because I lift 30 kg bins of fish on top of each other. I fillet the fish, do a lot of lifting with all the fillets and everything like that, and dragging the bins of fish into the chiller, pulling them out again. Yeah, it's hard work.
At 66, his body has had enough. He's retiring next month.
I'm starting to feel the aches and pains of my work through all the years, and that's really the reason why I'm finishing. And my back and arms, legs from standing, arms from lifting, back from lifting.
Mr. Lawrence believes the pension age should be staggered depending on what you do. He says he's worked with men who have had to leave the job while they're still in their 50s. 41-year-old David Topping agrees. His body is already feeling the effect of years of work as a welder and project manager.
Depending on your career, I think more the guys who are working, physically every day, you should be considered maybe 60, even lower. Whereas, I'm not being unfair to the guys in the office, but, your job is not as physical as what we'll be doing. So definitely, I would say it's a little bit unfair, but what can you do?
Mr. Topping works 6 days a week. He uses his one day off to rest his body.
It's a tiring job. By the end of the week, you're pretty much knackered. So having to work an extra 2 years is not fun.
Do you think you'll last?
Doing this, I don't think so. I think I would have to change trades or sort of revert to the project management in a few years' time because it's quite physical and you get a lot of damage to yourself. Obviously intoxicating fumes from welding and a lot of noise pollution and so forth. So yeah, a few more years of that I don't think will be good for you.
68-year-old Paul Y. Thompson has worked as a nurse for 38 years. She's also retiring.
I've decided I've had enough. The job as a nurse is really quite intense. You're dealing with a lot of emotional stuff from your patients. You're dealing with the stress of getting them all sorted out. You're dealing with the verbal and physical abuse from the patients and the family.
Paul Y. Thompson cut down to 3 days a week at 65, but she does not think people should have to work beyond that age.
If they're going to keep the age at 67, there needs to be people that are in physical work need to be able to get a benefit at 65 or earlier if possible.
The superannuation age will rise gradually to 67, starting in 20 years' time. In Auckland for Checkpoint, cause Sally Murphy Tene.
12 minutes past 6. Labour's new deputy leader, Jacinda Ardern, has attacked the government over its refusal to hold an inquiry into historical abuse claims in Parliament today. She did the attacking in Parliament today. Just hours after being elected as deputy leader, Ms Ardern accused the government of spending more on lawyers to fight the victims of historic abuse in court than it spends on settling their claims. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
Jacinda Ardern used her first question as Deputy Leader to ask the Minister of Social Development, Anne Tolley, if the government's treatment of state abuse survivors was good enough.
Is she satisfied with the government's treatment of those who are being abused by the state?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker,
Could I congratulate the new Deputy Leader on her elevation and her first question to me in 6 months as a result?
Order. It's a good example that some answers don't help the order of the House. I'll now ask the Minister to continue.
Of course, I am not satisfied with the government's treatment of those who have been abused by the state. Any kind of abuse in state care is absolutely abhorrent. That is why this government extended the previous Labor government's confidential listening and advice service for 7 years and have focused on settling claims with victims directly and personally wherever possible.
An Official Information Act response obtained by Ms Ardern shows one government lawyer was paid more than $750,000 for her work on just 3 cases. Ms Ardern, who is also Labour's Justice spokesperson, asked why the government is spending so much on lawyers to fight abuse victims.
Is she satisfied with the outcome of the Whakapākeri camp abuse case, where the Crown paid one QC more to fight tooth and nail than any of the people who were abused ever finally received?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, as the House is aware, I cannot comment on matters currently before the courts, but what I can say is that for more than a decade the government has recognised the importance of settling claims, and we try to settle these claims as early and directly with an individual as possible.
But Ms Ardern wasn't finished.
Why is she willing to spend millions of dollars fighting historic abuse claims but won't act on the call for a state inquiry into abuse to ensure it never happens again?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, as I stated in the previous answer, there is a requirement and the Crown does have a responsibility to protect the taxpayers' interests where there are significant and complex claims or matters that will have considerable impact on future taxpayers.
The government is refusing to hold the inquiry into historical abuse. The Prime Minister, Bill English, has questioned whether an inquiry would achieve anything. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Benedict Collins.
Earlier on Checkpoint, we heard from the BBC's Nick Bryant on the US President's new executive order on immigration. And as that immigration order claims send headlines back, the country Donald Trump may most want to get out of Washington is, in fact, Russia. With Trump's publicly stated admiration for Putin, with Michael Flynn gone for lying about his meetings with the Russian ambassador, and with Jeff Sessions telling a Senate committee he did not have communications with the Russians when he did, President Trump may be able to momentarily change the subject by immigration orders and Twitter accusations against Barack Obama, but Russia isn't going away. Doyle McManus has been with the LA Times since 1978, Washington columnist for the newspaper since 1983. The venerable correspondent has just written a column for the Times cataloguing the Trump camp's many and various engagements with Russia. It's pretty compelling stuff, I suggested to him.
It's a compelling case, but the puzzling thing, the frustrating thing, is it's a circumstantial case. The metaphor everybody is using is there's an awful lot of smoke here. We just haven't found the fire yet. So we don't yet know the answer to the substantive question, was there collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and the Russians? But we do know that they're certainly behaving as if they did something wrong. And that's what's keeping this scandal going.
Yes, it is. And their response is extraordinary. First of all, the lying, the deceit, the withholding of truths, and then the reaction when those truths are outed.
Yeah, now, and in fact, Trump makes that kind of odd in this sense. Donald Trump is the most enthusiastic liar any of us have ever seen in American politics. He utters false statements and then contradicts himself the next day and doesn't seem to notice the difference. And in an odd way, that makes it harder to evaluate whether he is knowingly telling a lie or not. And what has gotten him into trouble, oddly enough, is not the false statements he's made, but the false statements the people around him have made, because they don't have the reputation for, being quite so free with the truth as Trump is. So when Michael Flynn, his national security advisor, said, no, I never met with any Russians, and then said, well, I did meet with the Russians, but I didn't talk with them about sanctions. And then it turned out he had, and then it turned out he had actually lied to the Vice President of the United States about that. Okay, Michael Flynn is expected to tell the truth. And then when Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, said I had no communications with the Russians, and then it turned out that he did have communications with the Russians, then he was in trouble because he's a normal politician who's actually supposed to tell the truth. In a strange way, it's Donald Trump's underlings that have kept this thing going.
Trump's reaction is extraordinary, but of course it serves a purpose, doesn't it? It creates red herrings, it creates smoke screens. You say at the end of your column, he can rage at the media, Democrats and leakers all he wants. President Trump has brought this problem on himself. But in his reaction, does he persuade enough people that he is in fact more sinned against than sinning?
I don't believe he does. And in fact, I think there are two theories about Donald Trump's apparently erratic actions. One is that he's out of control and instinctive and visceral, and that this really isn't strategic. And then the other is that he is some kind of unique strategic genius, and that each of these diversions is cleverly designed to move the attention span, to change the subject, to turn the target, in this case, in the case of his last accusation, into Barack Obama instead of Donald Trump. Actually, I think both of those things are true at the same time. I think there is both a gut-level, sort of visceral Donald Trump reaction and some strategy here, but I don't think it's going to work in the long run. I've been a reporter in Washington for 30 years, and I've covered a lot of scandals, and there's a point in each one where a politician's problem turns from being just another controversy, just another strange set of allegations, into a full-blown scandal that you know is going to dominate the news for months and months. And I think the last week we just went through was the turning point where a fairly large and complicated controversy turned into a full-fledged scandal.
It's Doyle McManus, who has been the Washington correspondent, a columnist for the LA Times since 1983. Back home, Parliament has gone into urgency to fix a law after more than 100 child sex offenders were removed from the National Register. The law introducing the Child Sex Offenders Register came into effect last October, but offenders who were on release conditions or not yet sentenced were taken off the list. The Police Minister, Paula Bennett, told the House those 107 offenders were meant to be captured by the law.
We believe the public expects these offenders to be covered by the register, so we are acting with urgency to make Parliament's intention clear and remove any doubt that these people are subject to registration. As with any new legislation, there is a settling in period where the application of the legislation comes under scrutiny. This led to the identification of a small group of child sex offenders for whom eligibility for registration could be challenged.
The register requires people convicted of a child sex offence to tell police where they are staying, who they are staying with and their contact details. Mrs Bennett said the 107 offenders affected have continued to be monitored by police and corrections.
I would like to make it clear that all of those that are not necessarily registered have been monitored closely by police, and there have been no further convictions against children due to that monitoring.
Paula Bennett. The bill is expected to be passed through all of its stages tonight. It's coming up to 23 minutes past 6. Let's turn to some sport now. Usually a record of winners and those who fell just short, but Suzanne Stokes came last in the Taupō Ironman competition. Last. What's extraordinary and why we called her is not only that she finished it all, not only that after 17 hours she beat the cut-off clock by seconds, but that to do so she had to overcome intense pain for the entire duration of the marathon, and she had to be helped over the line by strangers desperate for her to finish. They included the women's champion, Jocelyn McCauley, and runner-up, Laura Siddle, first and last together. But the rules are clear and unsentimental. At 17 hours, you are no longer an Ironman. You're someone who tried and missed out. 17 hours and you're out. I asked Suzanne what her time was.
16:59:54. So actually there was 6 seconds left.
16:59:54?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 58. So you could have stopped for a cup of tea. You had 6 seconds.
I had 6 seconds, yeah. I cut it fine, yeah.
And at 17 hours, what happens?
That's the cut-off. There was cut-offs all throughout the course, so you just can't make it as an Ironman. That's the rules. So you had to be at certain points at certain times, and the last point is obviously the finish line at midnight.
So if you had come 1 second after midnight, as opposed to 6 seconds before it, you wouldn't have officially finished.
Correct. It would be a DNF. Did not finish.
Ooh, which would have been heartbreaking, wouldn't it?
Yeah, although I'd actually come to terms with that a few weeks earlier because one of my friends had a DNF on something else, and I thought, gosh, what happens if that's me? And I thought, well, you know what? Actually, I'm all right because I'll know that I've done the training and I've done what I could on the day. So I'd already faced that little demon previously, but yeah, it would have been heartbreaking, absolutely.
So can we go through the terrible statistics, the facts of what you are required to do as an Ironman, or in your case, Ironwoman? Yeah. So you've got to swim for how far?
It's 3.8 kilometres.
You've got to ride for?
180 kilometres.
And you've got to run for?
42.2, which is marathon at the end.
So you swim for 3.8k, you ride for 180k, and then you do a marathon, run a marathon.
Yeah, you're right. It's nuts. Somebody said I was a whack job, yeah. In fact, there was probably a few comments along that way.
And you're approaching the finishing line, and are you even going to get there? I mean, whether or not you're going to make it in under 17 hours is a moot point. The fact is you might not have made it at all. It kind of looked like you were going to collapse.
Yeah, I didn't think I wasn't going to make it until about 20 minutes out, and I asked, because my coach was in the car giving me advice, and I was out, and I said then, and she said, you can still do it.
How much were you hurting?
Oh, I was in absolute agony. I was in agony from about 130 k's into the bike.
So you did another 50k and then ran a marathon in agony?
Yeah, well, I had my back. We worked it out. I mean, my neck sort of. It's just old body, really.
Yeah, hold on a sec. Not that old. How old are you?
55.
Right, you're not on a walking frame yet, are you?
No, I might be now, but no. My neck stiffened up in the hard swim because it was a really, really tough swim, and I mean there was lots of people pulled from the swim. And everybody's saying how rough that swim was. The lake's supposed to be, it's not supposed to be open water like sea swimming. But it was actually a lake. It was really choppy. So my neck started, then it went into my shoulders, and then it went into my lower back, into my and that's where which shot some nerve pain down into my feet, which is why I was struggling to run.
And so let's get to the end. Who were so you famously, the two women who finished first and second, escort you at the very end, but who are the two, it looks like chaps, who precede them? Who are those two guys?
I believe that's Mike Riley, the commentator. Because he was talking, he was yelling into the mic, and I mean I could hear it over the speakers as well as in my ear, screaming at me. So yeah.
And so that they lift you, and they just. I mean, you're still on the ground. Your legs are still moving, but.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think. Feet were still going. Yeah. No, definitely.
And then the women who came first and second.
Yeah, they just grabbed me at the end, and just as I was coming up over there's a little rise which to the finish line itself. I mean, the lights were so bright, it's unbelievable.
With 6 seconds to go, was there anyone behind you, or had the people behind you just given up by then?
I believe there was a car. I heard there was a couple came in, a couple of people after the cutoff. Yeah, and I don't know how many, but there was people behind me. When I was coming into town, I think I had about 3k to go, and my coach, she said that there was still people behind me because I said, "Am I tail end Charlie?" And she said, "No, there's others."
But they didn't finish before the 17 hours.
No.
It's funny, and we'll be playing this footage so people who are watching it will see it. But for people who are listening, I find it very moving, and I can't work out what is so moving about it. And I think it's two great things. One, human kindness, just the decency of those people willing you to get there in under 17 hours. And two, how much you are clearly going through in your own, pursuit of finishing sub-17.
Yeah, the crowd support, and I mean there was a couple of firemen that weren't there at the end, but they were running in all their gear down the main road, down by the lake, alongside me, and they were asking me, and this is actually quite nice, they were asking me what my mantra was to keep me going, and I was telling them what they were, and one of my friends, supporters, she was there, she said, "Say it louder, you're going faster when you say it."
And what did you say? What was your mantra?
Well, I was saying all the way through, I said I was, and it was from a book, and I can't recall where the book's, who it's from, so it's not my quote, but it's I am strength, I am courage in action, and that was what I was saying to myself through the day, and then I was telling the guys on the run. So yeah, the support was phenomenal, unbelievable, and hearing everybody was just you could just feel it. It was just the energy. It was amazing.
Suzanne Stokes, who came last, but reminds us what sport is about. So much feedback tonight. Thank you all. Let's end on superannuation. Why is there never any talk of means testing for superannuation? Surely not funding those who don't need it would allow for those who do, and we could keep the retirement age at 65. Political parties have ruled that out. And this from Baz in Queenstown. Yes, it's 100% vital that there's more regulation around foreign drivers jumping in rental cars and taking to our roads. We live in Queenstown and see tourists fresh off the plane driving atrociously every single day. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your company. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Wellington College is investigating offensive comments about rape and consent. 2 students posted on social media. Winston Peters has absolutely ruled out supporting legislation raising the pension age. An employers group says more research is needed into the reasons men are paid more than women. And Malaysian police have sealed off the North Korean embassy in Kuala Lumpur. Our next news and weather at 7.
And then I heard Bobby Gentry sing Ode to Billy Joe. And I thought, oh man, I am Billy Joe.
That's veteran swamp rocker Tony Joe White talking about the origins of his sound. I'm Nick Bollinger, and you can hear that interview on the sampler.
In the south
and I'll be reviewing new local albums by French for Rabbits and Ghost Town. That's in the sampler tonight at 7:30.